And Jesus said, "Grapes are not harvested from thorns, nor are figs gathered from thistles, for they give no fruit. A good person brings forth good from the treasure of his heart. A bad person brings forth evil from the evil of his heart, and says evil things. For out of the abundance of the heart he brings forth evil." The Gospel of Thomas, saying 45. And friends, I'd like to tell you a short story based on this saying. In the small town of Willow Creek, population 3,200, people gathered most mornings at the Orchard Café, a cozy little diner on Main Street. The sign above the door showed a bunch of grapes, a fig tree, and the words, "Good fruit comes from good roots." The cafe was run by Kristin, a widow in her late 50s who had a gift for listening. Folks said she made the best blueberry pie in the county, but it wasn't the pie that kept the people coming back. It was her heart. Kristin hadn't always planned to run a cafe. Years earlier, she and her husband Tom had worked side by side on a small apple orchard just outside of town. Together, they dreamed of bottling cider, running hay rides in the fall, and keeping the land alive for the next generation. But when Tom died suddenly of a heart attack, the orchard slipped into disrepair. Bills piled high. Kristin sold the land piece by piece until all she had left was an old roadside fruit stand. One evening, as she packed up unsold apples, her grandmother's words echoed back. "What's in your heart is what you'll give to the world." She realized she could still give something beautiful, even in her loss. For that seed grew the idea of the Orchard Café, a place to serve food, but also to feed hearts. She poured her pain into creating a space that was warm and safe. Every table was decorated with small jars of wildflowers. On the wall behind the counter, she painted her grandmother's favorite verse. "Grapes are not harvested from thorns, nor figs from thistles, for out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks." That autumn, the town hit hard times. The factory, the only big employer around, announced layoffs. Fear spread quickly. People whispered bitter words at the cafe, blaming neighbors, arguing politics, even turning on lifelong friends. One man, Rick, sat daily at the corner booth, stirring his coffee, muttering about how everyone else was at fault. His words grew sharp like thorns. Each morning, Kristin poured his coffee with a smile, but she could feel the bitterness spreading, poisoning the air. Instead of snapping back, Kristin answered bitterness with kindness. When Rick complained that his neighbors never helped him, she brought him an extra slice of pie. When he cursed the town, she pointed out the high school football team raising money for uniforms. "Look at those kids. They still believe in this place." People began to notice. They saw how Kristin's words built up instead of tearing down. Slowly, a few others started doing the same. The mechanic across the street began offering free oil changes for laid-off workers. The librarian started hosting free resume workshops. Even the mayor, who usually stayed aloof, showed up one morning with a box of donuts for everyone in the cafe. One cold November morning, Rick slammed his coffee mug down and said, "This town's finished. Nothing good can come from it." Kristin quietly leaned on the counter and said, "Rick, you've been looking for grapes in thorns. But look around." She pointed to the people in the cafe, neighbors helping neighbors, teenagers running a canned food drive, the laughter of kids in the corner booth. Then she put her hand gently on the verse painted behind her. "A good person brings forth good from the treasure of his heart." And something broke inside Rick. He stared at the words, then at Kristin's steady eyes, and whispered, "Maybe my heart's been empty too long." From that day, Rick changed. He started showing up not just to complain, but to help. He became the first volunteer at the food drive, then the second set of hands at the mechanic's garage. People noticed the difference in his words, and suddenly he was bringing forth good fruit. In Willow Creek, times didn't magically get easier. Jobs were still scarce. Winters were still cold. But the town began to heal. Not because circumstances changed, but because hearts did. And at the center of it all stood the Orchard Café, born out of one woman's sorrow, but transformed into a place of hope, where Kristin reminded everyone that what comes out of the heart shapes the whole community. Because grapes aren't harvested from thorns or figs, from thistles. Good fruit comes only from good roots. God bless you, my friends.